الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا وحبيبنا رسول الله وعلى آله وصحابته ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم افتح علينا بحكمتك وانشر علينا برحمتك يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. وصل اللهم على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه الكرام. ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. Alhamdulillah. First of all, marhaban, welcome everybody. They say here marhaba with a soft H. So that's the way they say marhaban. They're soft people. First of all, it's an incredible blessing to be here in Turkey. It's a difficult time for the Muslims. As you know, we have right next door on the border, I think it's several 100-mile long border, is Syria, which is a place very beloved to the Prophet ﷺ. Barakallah fi Shamina wa Yamanina. And he said it 3 times, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And he also made dua against anyone that wished ill of the people of Sham or did anything to upset the people of Sham. And Sham, although in Syria they limit it to Damascus, Sham really means Lebanon, Syria, Palestine. It's the whole area that's considered blessed. But they're going through very trying time. Many of them are on the border now, refugees, the Turkish. In fact, they're not calling them refugees, they're calling them guests, duyuf, as a way of honoring their status. So, you know, that's troubling always because we're in such blessing and everything's comfortable and we have so many blessings. So it's important to remember that this is the nature of dunya. What's different about our time than other times is that we have television, we have 24-hour news cycle, we're exposed to all these things, but the Muslims throughout their history, if you look at their history, when there were some of the most flourishing times in one place were the worst times in other places. This is a human condition. What's happened now is it's globalized. Imam al-Nawawi radiallahu anhu was living during a very difficult time for Central Asians. Imam al-Ghazali was writing his great works during the occupation of Palestine. I mean, people forget that the Crusaders were in the Muslim lands while Imam al-Ghazali was really flourishing as an intellectual, as a spiritual genius, and all of the other things that he contributed. So it's important for us to keep that in mind, because some people, these events literally drive them into a type of madness. They lose their stability, they lose their balance. Because they are very trying for people, and certainly for the people in them. The best thing that we can do obviously is be advocates and make dua, especially. Dua is dua silahul mu'min. Prophet ﷺ said that dua is the silahul mu'min. It's the weapon of the believer. I mean, this hadith that the usuli scholars say asl al-kalam al-haqiqa, that the foundation of speech is literal, that you should take things literal before you move to any figurative interpretation. So if the Prophet said ad-du'a silahul mu'min, that's exactly what he meant. The dua is the weapon of the believer, not the sword, not the spear, not the tank, those are material weapons, but the real weapon of the believer, as-silah, the real silahul mu'min, is his connection or her connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if you have that connection, the Prophet ﷺ's dua was also وَمِنَ الْيَقِينِ مَا تُهَوِّنْ بِهِ عَلَيْنَا مَصَائِبَ الدُّنْيَا. Give us the yaqeen that makes all of the tribulations of this world insignificant. وَمِنَ الْيَقِينِ مَا تُهَوِّنُ بِهِ عَلَيْنَا مَصَائِبَ الدُّنْيَا. If you have yaqeen in your heart, if you have certainty, then the calamities of this world are exactly what they are. They're calamities of this world. And anything that happens in this world is hayyan in relation to what happens in the next world. Here our fitan are always limited. They have a beginning, a middle, and an end. In the akhirah, it's not like that. And Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu said, in every tribulation are 3 blessings. It could have been worse. You lost one hand, you could have lost both hands. You lost one eye, you could have lost both eyes. You broke your back, you could have lost your life. Right? It always could be worse. And then that it's in the dunya. Right? It's in the, as long as it's in this world, it's easy in relation to the next world, and then it's in worldly matters and not in religious matters. Because the real tribulation is when your deen is tried. People that lose their faith. People that's the real tribulation. As long as you have faith, everything is easy. So, think about our brothers and sisters next door, make dua for them. Alhamdulillah, you can see right beside them a country that's flourishing. It's good for those of you who haven't been to this country before. One of the real surprises is to see a functioning Muslim country. I mean, it's really nice to see Muslims functioning. This is a cleaner city than the European capitals. It's a cleaner city than our cities in America, who are people coming from America. The people have a lot of civil society. We'll exclude the traffic driving, because they would have to have something of Islam, of the modern Muslims, or they wouldn't be Muslim, right? But other than that, really, it's a civil society, beautiful people, and they've really welcomed us. And so, make dua for them, also for the president, for the leaders of the country. Wallahi, the Abu Hanifa radiallahu anhu, he said that if many of the scholars said this, but they said that the dua, that if you have a dua mustajab, you should do it for the leaders of the Muslims. Do it for the leaders. One of the, I wanted somebody to do this. Nobody ever did it for me. I asked some people to do it. But in the haram, I wanted to do a decibel count on the du'as. Because, everybody says Ameen, and they're higher on certain things and lower on other things. Right? So like when they say, oh Allah, save us from the fire, everyone will, Ameen, it goes way, way up. Then when it says, Allahumma aslih wulata umurina, it all goes way down when they ask for them to, to bless their rulers. And, but if they really, this is a sign that we don't have common sense anymore. Because with their rectification is the rectification of the ummah. The ulama say that it's the ahmaq who makes a dua against rulers. It's the fool, because the ruler's tawfiq is your tawfiq. If he has tawfiq, then the community has tawfiq. If he doesn't have tawfiq, everybody suffers from that. So it's important, that we ask Allah to bless the wulatul umur in Turkey, give them tawfiq. They're in a difficult time. There's a lot of enemies. There's a lot of people that don't want to see them succeeding like they are. In the European countries are in financial crises. They have here, last year they had 10% growth. This year it's close to 8%. They're close to China in their growth. So they're really thriving economically, and we make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continue to bless them and strengthen them, because their strength is the strength of the ummah. Inshallah. This is an interregnum period. People forget history. If you know history, you can have long periods where that are called interregnum periods. This is one of those periods for the Muslims. But Morocco went almost 100 years without leadership during a civil war period. So these things happen in time. We obsess about our little time that we spend here. We're not here very long. The historical story is much greater than our individual stories, which doesn't mean that our own individual stories are not significant. They are. They're very significant. And the greatest story is the story of our Prophet ﷺ, and that was a historical time. When you go, inshallah, we'll go see the panorama. SubhanAllah. Amazing. If you listen, the dead speak. Because everything that they did is here. Traces of it are all here. And they did great things, these people. So feel ashamed to speak in here, Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah, one of the things about this country that's a great blessing for us is that normative Islam, what academically could be called normative Islam, an Islam that transcends time and place. It's not particularized. It's the thing that is handed down. When we read, you can take a book written 200 years ago today in the United States. You can take, for instance, Walden Pond by Thoreau, and you can read it, and the amazing thing is that you can read it, despite the fact that between you and the original writer are a few hundred years. That the greatest tradition that we have is language, that it's handed down. That if I say to you, a rose by any other name would smell as sweet, I mean, even though that was written, several hundred years ago, you understand the meaning of those words because language is transmitted. But also, what's transmitted is meaning, right? Language is meaning, but the traditions of people are handed down. That's what the word tradition in Arabic, naqal, or turath is what's inherited. But naqal, it's called naqal in Arabic. It's yanquluhu. It's what's transmitted from one to another. And this is called tradition in English. It's the handing over of something, because we're only caretakers for a short time. We have a time to take care of amanat. They're called amanat. Addul amanati ila ahliha, that you should give the trust to the people of the trust. And each generation, there has to be people of trust that the previous generation that's leaving the world hands over to the generation now that is taking over the world. And this is the nature of life on earth. So our religion also has a tradition. Now the tradition has many components to it. But at the root of it are tools that have to be learned, because it's those tools that enable you to really understand the tradition. And our community developed very extensive tools. Now, to give you an example of one of the most important ones, and one of the few that is truly protected in an amazing way, is tajweed. Tajweed is part of our tradition, because the Sahaba, if you ask the Sahaba what idgham was, they wouldn't know what idgham was, or idgham bila ghunna. They wouldn't know what a med far'i was, or a med asli. They wouldn't know these things. If you gave them these technical terms, they wouldn't know them. But what they did know was how to recite the Quran. And one of the miracles of our religion and the miracles of our tradition is tajweed. Because if you study any language, you will know that there are many ways to pronounce things in languages, and they will debate about how things were pronounced at any given time and place. If you want to study, I studied New Testament Greek in college and high school, but my Greek teacher said, we don't know how this was pronounced. We think it was pronounced like this. I had a Latin teacher that was of the opinion that the V was pronounced as a W, but there's other Latin teachers that claim it was pronounced as a V. And maybe there were more than one dialect. Some said weni weni weedi, and the others said veni veni vici, like that, right? So these differences are all over human language, but tajweed is unique. If you go to Malaysia, they pronounce the Quran the same way. If you take Shia, they pronounce it the same as the Sunnis. If you take Ismailiyah, right, or a Zaydiyah, any sect in Islam, they will do the same tajweed. There's no difference in tajweed. There's 17 points of articulation. There's 5 basic makharij. There's the sifat of the huruf are the same. They don't debate. There's a few very minor debates about jim and things like this, but they're negligible. How is that possible that the book is pronounced exactly the same way in the entire Muslim Ummah? There's no khilaf about how the Quran is recited. And even the harakat, the masters of tajweed, they know exactly how many harakat are allowed and how much time can transpire between the sounds. That if you go too much, then it's wrong. If you do too little, it's wrong. There are things that have to have 2 harakat. There's things that have to have 4 harakat, right? وَلَضَّالِّينَ. There's a reason why you have to have it. You can't say وَلَضَّالِّينَ, right? In tajweed, you have to have some elongation there, right? So all of these, this is tradition. These things were handed down, and the reason they're the same is because the source was the same. If you go back to the science of, this is a PhD thesis for somebody. If you go back to all of the transmitters of the Quran, they go back to the same people. All of them, without exception. Only a handful of people transmitted the Quran. They all go back to the same ones. And so this is one of the miracles of Islam, is the tradition that's handed down, unbroken chains. Quran, Hadith, Fiqh. And then the tools, the adawat. Even though they're different schools and they debate about things. You have the Kufan and the Basran schools in language. These are different schools. And they will debate about certain things. So all of this is part of the gifts of Islam. Now in this country, this is a country where tradition has been maintained. It's broken down in many places. People are very confused. But if you come to Turkey, there's much less confusion about what religion is. And the reason for that is that they protected this tradition. Their ulama did not allow these alien forces to come in and divide and conquer them. Because Allah says, وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. We forget that it's a prohibition to become sectarian in the Quran. It's a prohibition. There's nahi an tafarruq. Allah says, وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. How did the Muslims do that? They had no synods. They had no magisterium. They had no councils. How did they do that? If you look at the Jews have certain rabbinical councils that meet together and decide what's orthodoxy and what's not. If you look at the Christians, they had councils. They had the Council of Nicaea, the Council of Chaldea, they had the Council of Alexandria. They had all these different councils. They come together and they meet, and their bishops discuss what's going to be doctrine, and they hash it out. And then they come to certain agreements, and some of them disagree, they become heretics or heterodoxic. Right? And that's how the Muslims had none of that. There's no councils. There's no synods. There's no magisterium. How did they come to these agreements? This is a miracle of Islam. The providential hand that is taking care of this religion is so evident to anybody that's willing to openly look at it. How did they agree that there were, the Sunni community agree there are 4 basic madhab? How did they agree to that? Despite the fact we had dozens of madhabs. What happened to Layth? Really, where's Sufyan al-Thawri? These were great fuqaha, but their ways died out. Where's Imam al-Awza'i? Where's Abu Dawud al-Zahiri? Why Malik, Abu Hanifa, Shafi'i, and Ahmad? Why these 4? The inaya ilahiyya. These are the people that Allah, and it's not that the others were less than them, but for whatever hikmah, Allah chose these 4 to be the canonical schools of the Sunni tradition and the Ja'fari and the Shia tradition. This is a miracle of Islam. To do this and to have them accept each other. The fact that they had 4 mihrab in the Kaaba is a miracle of Islam. That they weren't fighting each other. And if the Maliki was late for his Dhuhr prayer, he would, if the Shafi'i was late for the Dhuhr prayer, he would pray with the Malikis. If the Shafi'i, the Hanafi, and the Hanbali were late for their Asr prayer, they would pray with the Hanafis. If they were late for their Fajr prayer, they would pray with the Hanafis. And this wasn't because they were sectarian. They had 1 mihrab in Medina. People say, oh look, they got to a point, there was so much sectarianism, they had 4 madhab. No, it was pre-microphone. Kaaba is a big place. There was space for everybody, and that was the sa'at al-sudur. They had big breasts, and they let everybody pray there. Each madhab was honored. The Hanafi obviously got the biggest one because the majority were Hanafi. And the Shafi'i at one point also very big. The Maliki small, and then the Hanbali was very small because there were very few Hanbalis. But each was honored. And then in the Aqidah, you look at the Aqidah schools that were transmitted. The lots of debates. How did they agree on these things? Undeniably, there were periods of fitna, and we went through similar problems that other religions have had. But how did they arrive to these agreed upon things? This is not to deny that there are people, dissenters. There are, and if they were of a caliber that the other ulama recognized their right to dissent, they would acknowledge it. But if they were heretics, they would call it what it was. Right? Haraseya is a Greek word. Zandaqa is used in Arabic, but haraseya in Greek means to choose for yourself. A heresy is where you pick and choose your religion. You don't accept what's transmitted, what's agreed upon. And so in the Aqidah, this is what they came. They came to the Ash'ari, the Maturidi. The Ottoman Dawla was Maturidi. The Muhammad al-Fatih, he came into this city and conquered this city. The Prophet praised him. He said, Ni'mal Amir. He said, Ni'mal Jaysh wa Ni'mal Amir. Ni'mal Amiru Amiruhum wa Ni'mal Jaysh Jayshuhum. What a blessed Amir is their Amir, and what a blessed army is their army. He was, by consensus, Hanafi, Maturidi, and Naqshbandi. So the Prophet was praising a Hanafi, Maturidi, Naqshbandi. And people say, Bid'ah, Mubtada'. Astaghfirullah. Would the Prophet praise a Mubtada'? He would never praise a Mubtada'. And yet we know he praised the conqueror of this city. He said, Ni'mal Amir. Ni'ma is the way the Arabs say the best. That's the best Amir, their Amir. And he would never praise worldly things, not like he was a great general, which he was. No, he was praising his Iman. He was praising his Aqidah. He was praising his practice because he was Imamun Adil, and Sab'atun yadhilluhum Allah yawma la dhilla illa dhilluhum. 7 are given the shade of Allah on the day of judgment when there's no shade except Allah's shade. The first, Imamun Adil, a just ruler. That's how high their maqam is. A high ruler. The dhikr of the umara is adal. That's their dhikr, to practice justice. They don't have to do a lot of subha, even though he did, or do a lot of tilawa, even though he did. Qiyam, they don't have to do any of that. If they're just, that's their dhikr. And they reach these high maqams. So that was who he praised. So this transmission, and then the third area, this is Iman, Islam, and Ihsan. How did they agree on the way of Imam al-Junayd? Imam al-Junayd is Imam by consensus. Imam al-Ta'ifatain. No Sunni can yat'anu fi. Dr. Omar, you're here, is a much greater scholar than I am. You know, I'm astaghfirullah, not even put my name under scholarship, but student of knowledge. But Dr. Omar, Imam al-Junayd, anybody disagree on him from the Sunni tradition? Do you know? Nobody. Ibn Taymiyyah praises him, everybody praises him. He's Imam al-Ta'ifatain. He was a great scholar in his madhab of Thawri. He was a great scholar, and he was a great Sufi. And his tasawwuf spread because one of his students was the single most important narrator of Abu Dawood's Musnad. So when Abu Dawood, the Sunan of Abu Dawood, when he went to Mecca and began transmitting the hadith, he taught Imam Junayd's teaching there, and it spread all over the world. So in Morocco, the little children, they learn fi aqdar ash'ari wa fiqh Malik wa fi tariqat al-Junayd al-Sadiq, and that's what they all learn. The aqid of Imam al-Ash'ari, the fiqh of Imam Malik, and the way of Imam al-Junayd. And this was Islam, Iman, and Ihsan. And people say, you know, where is that? Where's tasawwuf in Islam? Where's the word? It's a technical term. It's a technical term, just like mantiq, kalam, fiqh. Fiqh is a technical term. People forget that. All the hadiths in which the Prophet uses fiqh, he did not mean jurisprudence. He meant understanding. مَنْ يُرِيدِ اللَّهُ بِهِ خَيْرٍ يُفَقِّهُ فِي الدِّينِ. He gives them an understanding of the religion. They use it later, and the books of fiqh always begin with that hadith, because it's tafa'ulan, tabarrukan. But the original meaning of that, you look in the commentaries of a hadith, it meant يُفَهِّمُهُ فِي الدِّينِ. And the Sahaba knew that رُبَّ حَامِرِ فِقْهٍ لَيْسَ بِفَقِيهٍ. Sometimes somebody who walks around with a lot of information in his head isn't a faqih. They have all the outward, what Imam al-Ghazali calls al-mutarassimun, the formalists. And he speaks very ill of them in the Ihya. Al-mutarassimun are the people of rusum. They're trapped in the outward letter of the law, and they don't know the spirit of the law. In Western, if you're studying Western tradition, what they call deontological ethics as opposed to teleological. In other words, a command theory type of ethics where everything's just rules, statute, law, without understanding the teleological nature of law. What's the purpose? Why do we have these rules? Why were we given these things? Allah has reasons for everything. He gave us intellect. He made us rational creatures. We're not irrational creatures, even though we behave irrationally and we have an irrational component to us. But our nature is rational. Language is rational. Syntax is rational. The reason you can sit here and listen to me for however long you listen to me is because my words are put together in a way that has meaning. If it didn't, then you couldn't. If I was just table, sky, letter, I don't know, if you just start talking like that, you walk out and say he's gone mad, right? Because it would be irrational. So we are rational creatures, and that's why Allah has spoken to us in a way that speaks to our intellects. فَاعْتَبِرُوا يَا أُولِي الْأَبْصَارِ. Think, people of discernment, people of inner eye, people of understanding. فَاعْتَبِرُوا. I'tibar is a beautiful word. In Arabic, it's related to the word Arabiya. The abara. Ma'bara is a bridge. الدنيا معبرة فتعبروها ولا تعمروها is one of the sayings of Isa. This world is a bridge, so cross over it. تعبروها ولا تعمروها. Don't build on it. Don't think it's a permanent abode. Cross over it. The ibra is the lesson, but it comes from ubur, which is language takes you from one place to another. That's why all language is, according to Ibn Jinni and other great Arab scholars, the linguist said that language is metaphorical by nature, because we're using symbols, signs to signify something in order for me to take your mind from one place to another. So this is what i'tibar is. It's the ability to look at one thing and understand something else by it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He tells you, يُخْرِبُونَ بِيُوتُمْ بِأَيْدِيهِمْ وَأَيْدِي الْمُؤْمِنِينَ, that they destroy their houses with their own hands and with the hands of the believers, Allah is saying, فَاعْتَبِرُوا. Think about this. Isn't it amazing that Allah can take a people and He will make them destroy their own houses with their own hands, the houses that they cherish, that they built with those hands, and yet He will cause them to destroy their own houses as a punishment to them. So Allah is saying, reflect on this. See the qudra of Allah. See the qudra of Allah in this. Because nobody would destroy his house. It's a mad thing to do. But people do it because Allah is punishing them. And so this is what Allah is saying. See the ibrah, the lesson in it. And when the ibrah is really penetrated, when it's really understood, you get the abra, which is tears. That's where the abra come from. Because that's where meaning, when meaning penetrates the heart, the eyes often well up. Because they're overwhelmed. It fills the heart. And so that you can be filled with pain. So much pain that you begin to overflow. And that's what tears are. They're the overflowing of the heart with something. You can have tears of joy. And that's when the heart is filled with joy, so it overflows. You can have meaning so powerful that you're so overwhelmed by it that you start to overflow. That's what tears are. They're overflowing inside your souls of meaning. Negative, positive, spiritual, material, but meaning. So this is a great gift that we have, this tradition that we have. And there's people that want to reduce Islam to two-dimensional Islam. They want to reduce it, or one-dimensional. They want to make it Islam without Iman and Ihsan. Or they want to make it Iman without Islam and Ihsan. Or they want to make it Ihsan without Iman and Islam. Or they want to make it Ihsan and Iman without Islam. You can't. It's a holistic, it's a three-legged stool. You have to have all three for it to stand. Right? You cannot have one without the other. And this is why if Islam becomes divested of its spirituality, it becomes a shell. You have to have ihsan. And you have to have iman. And you can't have ihsan without iman and Islam, really, in reality. But there are people that will want to try to make it that. Islam's spiritual. Islam's here, brother. It's in the heart. No, Iman is in the heart. Islam is it's an outward thing, Sharia. It's doing outward thing. Anybody can be a munafiq, can be a Muslim, but he can't be a mu'min, because mu'min is an interior reality that reflects on the exterior. And then ihsan is the depth dimension. It's what gives you, the Iman gives you the height. Islam gives you the breadth, but ihsan gives you the depth. And that's why what you witness here is ihsan, because these were people of ihsan. I mean, these were great people of ihsan. And so it's, you know, I just, to a few statements in conclusion, one of the things, all of us are on a journey. This is the nature of life on earth. You came into the world, Allah, one of His names, everything is a tajalli of Allah. You know, all these names are manifesting in the world, everywhere. He's huwa zahirun. You know, He's outwardly manifest. His names are manifesting themselves before us. He's the muntaqim. He's the afu. He's the ghafoor. Inshallah, you're going to do the names in these coming days. But He's qahirun fawqa ibadihi, you know, and His qahar is powerful. Like He is the overwhelming, the overpowering. And part of being overwhelmed is that you came into the world and Allah has put you here. And you're on a journey, whether you like it or not. Some people don't want to go on a journey, but they're forced to. Right? They're forced to go on a journey. We're on a journey, whether you like it or not. And the journey has marahil. It has stations, and there's a road in front of you, and then there's diversions, do you see? But the problem with the diversions is that they won't get you to your goal, but you still end up going on that final journey. You're just not prepared. The diversions will always put you back, but without the provision you needed to really make the journey. So there's all these diversions, and shaitan is just sitting there on the road. He's got everything too. I mean, this is shaitan's heyday. He's never had more tools than he has today. It used to be ghiba, you needed another person with you. Now all you have to have is a cell phone or the internet. You can be anywhere and do ghiba. It used to be you had to have another person. You know, now anywhere you go, you've got the tools for ghiba, just right there. You have the tools for namima, right? It used to be, you know, that, I mean, now people, it's amazing, the internet and the amount of time that people spend on these things. Really, if you start, you know, you should clock in and just look and see what kind of time you spend on these things. Because people say, oh, I don't have any time. I never believe that, because I know how much time I waste. You know, really. Everybody, we are master time wasters, human beings. Even the most efficient people waste time. Because you can't, like a machine has an efficiency rate. You know, like a car, they say it's about 7%. Like 93% of the car's energy is just wasted in a combustion engine, very inefficient. The human body, it's working at about 33% at optimal work. It's dissipating a lot of caloric energy. This is the nature of our creation. Allah has made a creation like this, right? Ad-kamalu lillah. Only Allah is perfect. Even though His creation has its perfection, He put in the creation all these signs that by its very nature, it's falling apart. So also like that is your time, the amount of time you use. Everybody needs lahu. The Prophet ﷺ, he permitted it in certain times. The Sahaba used to have times of recreation. Recreation is an important part of life. But it's how much time you're wasting. Because you need some time, downtime. You have to have it. You have to sleep. You know, the eating also. And then there has to be that time just where your mind is, you can't read all the time. You'll get sick. Really, you will. If you read all the time, you can't read all the time. And if you do, if you know how to read, if you're doing serious reading, you can't read. Serious reading is more tiring than just empty reading. Reading for tasliyah, just for entertainment. Like thinking about what you're reading takes a lot of energy. So people waste time. It's a human condition. But Allah tells us, you know, وَلَا تُسْرِفُوا, you know, not to be people of israf. وَلَا تُبَذِّرْ تَبْذِيرًا, you know, don't be people of tabdhir. إِنَّ الْمُبَذِّرِينَ كَانَ إِخْوَانَ الشَّيَاطِينَ, because they're the mubadhirin, the consumers, are brethren of the shayateen, right? People that yubadhiru, they waste, just consume things. أَهْلَكْتُ مَالًا لُبَدًا, you know, the man boasts, I have spent vast amounts of wealth. أَهْلَكْتُ, like I destroyed it, consumed it. Right? One of the old English words for the devil is the consumer, because he consumes souls. And that's what this modern world is doing with people, is just consuming them. They're wasted away. Really, if you look out there, especially where people don't have ibadah anymore, you see the vacuity of the faces. You can see the emptiness. You can see the pain. There's a lot of suffering. And you shouldn't look at these people with contempt. You know, Muslims have traditionally looked with compassion. It's arrogance to have this view of superiority because, oh, they don't worship or they don't know. You should have told them. Uqba bin Nafi', when he arrived to the ocean of the Atlantic, they say he had his horse ride into the ocean as the waves were hitting his horse. He said to Allah, "Oh Allah, if I knew there were people on the other side of this ocean, I would build ships to take your religion to them." And that was the himmah of the early Muslims. And that was the himmah of these people also, you know, to take Islam. And the great people of Tasawwuf who spread Islam in India and went into the little villages with the Hindus where they're worshipping idols and things like that, and they taught them about Islam. So this is, you know, we're in a time where the tools of the shayateen are immense. You just have so many tools. And so this is a really, all of us, and I include myself, wallahi, all of us are blessed to have this. This is called leisure time. This time that we have, leisure, in the traditional sense of the word. Joseph Pieper, a great German philosopher, wrote a book called Leisure. And what he argues is that leisure is the foundation of civilization. The time to think. It is the time to cultivate the mind and the spirit. That is what leisure is. Leisure comes from a Latin word which means license. It's a permission. It's the time where you're permitted to do the things you were created to do fully, right? It's a rukhsa. And so you have a time now, this time that you have here, it's a great time of immense benefit, inshallah. So my advice to myself and to all of you is utilize this time. This is precious time. It's free time. You're people of leisure right now. You look, we have people serving us. You look at those people. They're serving us. There's people serving our food. There's people cleaning our rooms. There's people driving us to and from, right? Look with the eye of love to those people, because without them we couldn't do what we're doing. We would be busy doing those things. And so what an honor to be amongst people that Allah allows this time to be afforded to us, to cultivate our minds and our spirits, to try to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What a gift. I mean, just Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, hamdan yuwafi ni'amahu yukafi mazida. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, hamdan yuwafi ni'amahu yukafi mazida. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, hamdan yuwafi ni'amahu wa yukafi mazida. The Prophet said if you say that 3 times in the morning and the evening, then if you say it sincerely from your heart, it's enough of gratitude to Allah. But really, be in a state of gratitude to Allah, because this is just such a blessing to be afforded this leisure time to cultivate our spirits and our minds, especially before Ramadan, because this is going to be an excellent preparation. Inshallah, this will be the best Ramadan that we have. May Allah give us a beautiful Ramadan, and a beautiful Sha'ban is a great, we're going to be here. A nice thing also about the Sunni country, this Sunni country, is they really honor the traditional days. Like the Nus Sha'ban is a big night, It's a big night. I'll tell you, there's a khilaf about it, which is fine. It's a khilaf. Imam Malik did not practice Sha'ban, Nus Sha'ban. Imam Malik himself, he didn't. The hadiths were from the people of Sham. Al-Awza'i considered it a big night. The Sham ulama of the Tabi'een all elevated Nus Sha'ban. But it spread throughout the world, and the Malikis ended up celebrating it. So even though Imam Malik, it's fine. If people don't want to celebrate, that's fine. But Ibn Rushd gave a great qaida. Ibn Rushd said, if you ever have an ikhtilaf about the rahmah of Allah, always err on the side of rahmah. If there's a valid ikhtilaf, does the Quran get to dead people or doesn't it? He just said, look, just consider it that it gets there, because it's rahmah. And wherever there's more rahmah, then there's more Islam. Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah, rahimahullah radiyallahu anhu, he said that al-Islam kulluha rahmah, فَإِذَا انْتَقَرَتْ مِنَ الرَّحْمَةِ إِلَى ضِدِّهَا لَيْسَ مِنَ الْإِسْلَامِ. Islam is all mercy. So if it goes from mercy to its opposite, it's not from Islam. He said, al-Islamu hikmah, kulluha hikmah. فَإِذَا انْتَقَرَتْ مِنَ الْحِكْمَةِ إِلَى ضِدِّهَا فَلَيْسَ مِنَ الْإِسْلَامِ. Islam is all wisdom. So if it goes from wisdom to its opposite, it's not from Islam. He said, al-Islamu adrun, kulluhu adrun. فَإِذَا انْتَقَرَ مِنَ الْعَدْلِ إِلَى الْجَوْرِ لَيْسَ مِنَ الْإِسْلَامِ. He said that Islam is justice, it's all justice. So if it goes from justice to its opposite, then it's not from Islam. So may Allah, inshallah, give you all the blessing of this time. May He give you the ability to make use of it. We really owe also a lot to the volunteers. There's a group of volunteers. Please treat them all with respect. There's always going to be things that arise. People can have genuine problems, and then you have whiners and complainers. And I'm not saying any of you are from those people. I don't think there's any whiners and complainers here, inshallah. But there are people that just, their nature is they just like to whine and complain. People like that. I mean, all of you have had those experiences. And so they will just find anything to whine or complain about. The food's not good enough, shame on you. مَا عَابَ طَعَامًا قَطْ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. The Prophet ﷺ never criticized food. We have so much blessing. The food will be excellent food. So, if you have a valid complaint or something, then take it to one of the people with adab. That's fine. But don't complain and just to be a complainer. So, nobody likes complainers, even other complainers. They don't, because they want to be complaining, and you're taking up all their time. Right? They want to wait till you stop complaining so they can start complaining. So, inshallah, Aisha Subhani, mashallah, may Allah bless her, she's mother and a physician, and she did so much work to really make this happen. And also Dr. Rajab Shintirk, he's the head of this incredible revival here of traditional Islamic studies, really doing a beautiful job. And I would say, he asked me yesterday, he wants master's and PhD candidates. So if anybody is looking to do a master's or PhD, then you can apply here. They have a 1-year program to learn Turkish. They put you in a mahad. It's 5 hours a day, and you learn university level Turkish in a year, and then you can do the master's and PhD. It's an accredited program. We're going to have, inshallah, Zaytuna during this time, we talked about it last year, we're going to have a letter of understanding, memorandum of understanding between the two institutions, so people that graduate from Zaytuna can come here automatically if they get a degree from Zaytuna to do their master's PhD here. So alhamdulillah, you know, and then yesterday we had Dr. Bakar, who's a beautiful man. He was a professor of philosophy. He's very close. He's one of the top advisors to the president, and he's on the board here because the President Erdogan has been very heavily involved in this institution here, which is part of the Alliance of Civilizations. So he visited us last year, and so maybe we'll get a visit, but they, just for security reasons and other things, they don't really tell us what's going to happen. So, but he's very, very great man, inshallah. May Allah protect him. And is there any, maybe just 4 questions, and then does anybody have any question they want to ask? Go ahead, tafadhal. What's that?
You mentioned, you quoted Ibn Rushd.
Yeah.
And you said if there's an ikhtilaf, if you can just...
If there's an ikhtilaf, a valid ikhtilaf amongst the ulama about something that involves the rahmah of Allah. Like he used it as the example of the qira'ah. You know, some of the ulama say you can recite for the dead and give it as charity to them. And some say you can't. Because there's a hadith, إِذَا مَاتِ ابْنُ آدَمَ انْقَطَعْ مِنْ عَمْرِي إِلَّا مِنْ ثَلَاثٍ. And some of them apply that hadith to the idea of qira'ah. So some say you can do a khatam of Quran and give the thawab to a dead person. And that's a khilaf. The majority of ulama say that you can, and that it does benefit the dead. But Ibn Rushd said this is a khilaf about the rahmah of Allah. And so when there's a khilaf about the rahmah, he said, it's better to assume the rahmah side of it. Because ma qadrullah haqqa qadrihi, you know, they don't really give Allah His true estimate. Rahmati wasi'at kulli. So that was the point. So in a lot of these things, you know, there's a khilaf about many things in Islam. They're not, you know, the majority of ulama permit the mawlid, and some don't. There are some valid ulama that just, you know, they didn't like it. So, but they didn't say not to celebrate. You have to celebrate the mawlid. If you're not happy that he was born, you're a kafir. So you have to celebrate, because mawlid means makan and zaman. You know, it's ism makan and zaman. You have to be happy. Ihtifal bil mawlid. You have to have ihtifal in your heart that the Prophet was born. And you should love the place he was born, which is Mecca. You have to. So, وَنَحْتَفِلُ بِمَكَّةَ بِمَوْلِدِهِ يعني. We have to. So, but the idea of specifying a day, like the 12th of Rabi' al-Awwal, and having formal things as a thing, some of the ulama said the early people didn't do it, let's not do it. But the vast majority, historically, said it was, and they had their proofs. The Mawlid of Isa is in the Quran. Surah Maryam is clearly celebrating his birth. And when the man asked the Prophet if I could fast on Mondays, he said, Fihi wuridtu. In other words, it's a good day. I was born on that day, so it's a good day. That's in Sahih Muslim. So it's saying it's an auspicious day. Just because he was born in that day, it's an auspicious day. And so he was acknowledging in the question of that man that one of the blessings of Monday is that was the day he was born. And so, you know, the ulama have their proofs on both sides, but it's a khilaf that shouldn't be an issue amongst Muslims. And this is part of the problem of modern Islam, well, and pre-modern as well, but part of just provincial Islam, let's call it provincial Islam. Part of the problem with provincial Islam is people want to impose their view about something on everybody. And if it's a matter of ijtihad, you can't do that. It's, you know, al-mukhtalifu fihi la yunkaru. Something that has ikhtilaf is not condemned by Sharia. But that's a qaida fiqhiyya. It's a universal principle in Islam. Al-mukhtalifu fihi la yunkaru. ينكر المجمع عليه. Now the ulama do have caveats about that qaida. If you're living in a country where the majority is following one school, like Morocco, where traditionally it was a Maliki country, and people started doing things that were against the urf, then they said, in those type of situations, you could tell them not to do it. But generally, especially in our time now, we have to go for the most compassionate view. Because one of the maqasid of Islam, the 6 universals, or 5, however you want to look at the nasab and the i'rd, but the 6 universals of Islam, the first one is protection of the deen. That's the first one, is to protect the deen. Now, there are things in the past that you did to protect the deen that today would actually cause the opposite to happen. And this takes understanding. If you applied apostasy laws today, it would have the opposite effect of what it had in the past. In the past, everybody believed, they were actually glad to see an apostate gone. Right? So religions had apostasy law, they applied them, right? But if you applied the apostasy laws today, you'll drive people out of the religion. It has the opposite effect. Sayyidina Umar suspended the cutting off of the hand during drought because people would do things in those situations, and he understood that the hifz al-nafs was over hifz al-mal. And so they were stealing because they were just trying to protect themselves. And so he suspended one for the other. So hifz al-deen, right? To protect the deen, you have to look at what, and this is hikmah, maqasid, looking at the intentions of the sharia. And so, in this time you have to look, and just allow for a lot of rahmah. You should always have that, but particularly now because you drive people away from the religion. And I've seen this happen. People drive people out of Islam. I've seen converts driven out of Islam, personally. And then a lot of Muslims say, oh, khalas, nabadahu al-Islam. They just have this lackadaisical attitude about that, as if it's, Allah yamti khabatha. No, there's asbab, and we're going to be taken into account if the Prophet ﷺ will stand beside a dhimmi who was wronged in a Muslim land. He'll be his advocate with Allah on Yawm al-Qiyamah. In other words, don't burn him because he was mistreated by the Muslims. He didn't know what my religion was. He only knew the foul deeds of people that claim to be my followers. The Prophet is an advocate of rahmah. And if there's a reason to have always look for excuses for people, the Prophet ﷺ said that the hypocrite looks for faults and the believer looks for excuses. Right? 70 yaltamisu sab'ina udhran for his brother. 70 excuses for his brother. Whereas the munafiq, just right away, they go to the worst thinking. Because that's in their heart. That's their reality. They're just projecting onto the other their own reality. Any another? MashaAllah. Alhamdulillah. All right. Well, may Allah make this a blessed time for you. We're going to really see some wonderful places. For those of you who haven't been here before, we're going to get to see the amanat. And the amanat these are sacred trusts that were with the Jews. They were in their taboot. Some of them were in the taboot, like the stick of Moses. The Jews had that. It was part of the baqiyah that Allah says in the Quran remained with the family of Moses. And the tas of Abraham, the thing that the hearts of the Anbiya were washed in, these were all in the taboot of Bani Israel. And then they went to the Christians because they had the amana during their period. But then finally they ended up with the Muslims. So these are amanat. And then added to the Christian Jewish amanat are the Muslim amanat. which are the things that the Prophet ﷺ left behind. So it's a very powerful place to go in there. It's, don't be frivolous, don't squander the presence that's in that room, because it's awesome, really, it's awesome. The hudur in there is amazing, and there's a lot of tourists and things like that, but inshallah we'll get an opportunity to go in there as a group, but really have adab in that room. It's a place of presence and a place of reflection, because Yaqub alayhi salam, his eyes were healed from the shirt of Yusuf. Just what was on the body of his blessed son healed his eyes, and he knew it was his son, so, and the Sahaba kept strands of the Prophet's hair. We know it's in the Sahih collection. In Al-Bukhari, they used to put the hair into the water, and anybody who was sick in their stomach would drink the water and get well. These are Sahih hadith. So this whole idea, this is all bid'ah, and these people are not reading the sound hadith from the Sahaba about these things. And every religion acknowledges relics. All these religions, they always acknowledge relics. So these are things that are left behind, and tilka atharu tadullu alayna fanduru ba'dana ila al-athari. And my final advice, alhamdulillah, we're students of knowledge, we're doing our best, no claims here. Unfortunately we didn't have Sheikh Abdullah bin Bayya. He was here, he had to go. He really wanted to stay. He told me to give his greeting. He's real alim. So they say if there's no water, use tayammum, but even tayammum claims, I'm not making them, I'm just, so, the ulama, they say that you have to take from people, in hadith literature, you have what's called a wijada. Wijada is, the early muhaddithun were completely against it. The idea that you could just take a book of hadith and start transmitting them or something. No, you had to take books from scholars, either munawala or qira'ah, or imba, some way. Sometimes they would give you their corrected text and give you ijaza, and then you could relate it even if you didn't read them with them. But the idea of just going and buying a book in a store was completely rejected by the early community. And we're in Asr al-Wijada. This is the Asr of Wijada. It's just people go and they get on Google or they buy a book and they become faqih and start giving fatwa and things like that. So our ulama say, Abu Hayyan al-Tawhidi has some famous lines. He said, يَظُنَّ الْغُمْرُ أَنَّ الْكُتُبَ تَهْدِي أَخَ فَهْمٍ لِإِدْرَاكَ الْعُلُومِ. That the inexperienced one thinks that books will guide the one of cleverness to understanding. Somebody who's smart, he's smart. وَلَا يَدْرِي الْجُهُولُ بِأَنَّ فِيهَا غَوَامِضَ حَيَّرَةَ عَقْلَ الْفَهِيمِ. But the ignorant one doesn't know that in these books are difficulties that confuse even the most intelligent people. إِذَا رُمْتَ الْعُلُومَ بِغَيْرِ شَيْخٍ ضَلَلْتَ عَنَ الصِّرَاطِ الْمُسْتَقِيمِ. If you try to get these sciences without a teacher, you will go astray. وَتَلْتَبِسُ الْأُمُورُ عَلَيْكَ حَتَّى تَصِيرَ أَضَلَّ مِنْ تُومَ الْحَكِيمِ. And you will go more astray, and things will become so confused that you'll end up like Thomas, the doctor. There's different variations of what happened to him, but they say he inherited books, and in one of the books it said, Al-Habbatu Sawda Dawa'un min kulli da. The black seed is a cure of every disease, but the transcriber, the scrivener, had put 2 dots. So he read it, Al-Hayatu Sawda. The black snake is a cure for every disease. So he let a black snake bite him and he died. So that's Tum al-Hakim. Ibn Arif has some lines. He says, من لم يشافع عالما بأصوله فيقينه في المشكلات ظنون. If you don't hear orally from teachers and the foundations that they have, your certainty in the difficulties will just be doubt. من أنكر الأشياء دون تيقن وتثبت فمعاند مفتون. If you reject things without ascertaining what they are, like people that just make a rejection, oh, that's hadith mawdu'. They don't know. They don't know. There's a hadith, and I quoted it one time, it said, أنا مدينة العلم وعلي بابها. I'm the city of knowledge and Ali is its door. And somebody said, hadith mawdu', لا أصل له. And just like, I was like, okay, I didn't know. But I went back and I checked, and it's a hadith, it's there. The ulama, there's some difference of opinion about it, but it's a hadith, it's related by muhaddithun. The hadith, once I heard another time a hadith quoted, اطلب العلم ولو في الصين, seek knowledge even in China. حد موضوع لا أصل له. People say these things like they're nothing. Just, the ulama of adab, if you read their book, they say, لم أقف عليه. I didn't find this hadith. They don't say, لا أصل له. Every hadith in the world, mashallah, you acknowledge. There are books of hadith that were destroyed. We lost hadith. A lot of the hadith in the Ihya, some of the ulama say that those hadith came from other sources. But that hadith is related by Hafidh al-Maghrib ibn Abd al-Barr in the Kitab al-Ilm. And the meaning is sound, and it's been quoted for centuries by the ulama as being a sound meaning. So he says, if you reject things without really ascertaining whether they're true or not, and tathabbut, he said you're just mu'anid maftoon. You're an obstinate, deluded person. And then he said, al-kutubu tadhkiratun liman huwa alimun. Books are a reminder for scholars who already know. وَالصَّوَابُهَا بِمُحَالِهَا مَعْجُونُ. And what's right in those books and what's impossible or difficult in those books is mixed together. They're mixed together. And then he said, وَالْفِكْرُ. That's a beautiful last line. Because he says, وَالْفِكْرُ غَوَّاصٌ عَلَيْهَا مُخْرِجٌ وَالْحَقُّ فِيهَا لُؤْلُؤٌ مَكْنُونٌ. He does in the very thing he's warning you from. He makes it very hard to understand the last line. He said that the idea, understanding, can only be brought out by somebody who dives deep. And the haqq in these books is like pearls that are buried. You have to, the pearl diver has to learn how to hold his breath. It's a science that it's transmitted. But pearl divers traditionally, they can hold their breath much longer than normal people. And they dive deep so they know how to get the pearl, and then they come up. And that's the same with books, the warning that he's making, Ibn Arif, about that. So, alhamdulillah, all of the teachers here have, studied with teachers. Mashallah, we have, Dr. Omar, I consider him alim in the West, definitely. But we're students of knowledge, and so, claims, just we'll do our best, inshallah, and inshallah, try to overlook any mistakes. Subhanakallah wa bihamdika, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. اللهم اغفر لنا وارحمنا وتوب علينا. اللهم إنا نسألك علما نافعا وقلبا خاشعا وعينا دامعة. اللهم اشفينا واكفينا يا الله. اللهم لا تدع لنا ذنبا إلا غفرت ولا هما إلا فرجت ولا حاجة هي لك فيها رضا إلا يسرت وقضيت يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم اشرح صدورنا. اللهم اقبل أعمالنا. اللهم وفق القائمين على هذا المكان، وفقهم يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم كما أضافنا فجعلهم من ضيوفك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم كما سقانا وأشبعنا، اللهم أسقيهم وأشبعهم يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم إنا نسألك رضا والتقى والغنى اللهم وفق إخواننا وأحبابنا في الشام وفي كل مكان حيث يعانون في سبيلك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم اجعل كيد الكائدين في نحورهم، وفق المسلمين وانصرهم منصورين يا أرحم الراحمين. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون، والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله.